Welcome, and I hope you're here to meditate. I think we're going to get a nice long meditation in tonight. Everybody here, it looks like everybody's a veteran, so we don't have to go through the beginning stuff. You were here before, weren't you?
No, first time.
Brand, first time?
Yeah.
Okay, have you meditated in the past?
Yes.
Okay, great. Great. So everybody has meditated, and we usually when I do the guiding, I touch on the basics anyway, and that basically means bring your attention to the breath, and find that sweet spot. Realize your true nature by coming into the presence, and stay there for an hour, basically. But it's not always that easy. Yeah. I used to work a 9-to-5 job in a music store, and there was always a fellow there that would always ask me. He said, "What do you do for Christmas?" And I said, we have Christmas trees, and we do this. We have, everything that people do for Christmas, and because he knew I was, like considered a Buddhist or something, and he said, "Well, a Buddhist," he said, "do Buddhists celebrate Christmas?" And I said, "Yeah, I mean, how can you not? It's there, and he said, he basically wanted to know what we do, and he said, because you don't believe in God, do you?" And I said, well, that really doesn't have much to do with celebrating Jesus, who actually walked on the earth, and because, besides, it's just kind of like a Jesus birthday party, right? The Christmas, And so every year he would ask me these questions, about, what a Buddhist does for Christmas, like it was some kind of a strange thing or something like that. And of course, we all celebrate Christmas, whether we're in the United States anyway, whether we're, depending on how we celebrate it. And then the other day I got asked if I believed in a higher power, and I think that was the exact words. And yeah, I said, you have to define what you mean by that, And generally, when the Buddha was asked about whether he believed that there was a God, and he didn't really lean one way or the other. He just said that he believed that believing in a God wouldn't help a person find their freedom, their ultimate freedom. It wouldn't lead to waking up or enlightenment, by believing in a God. And so in some ways he kind of dodged the question a little bit by not really answering it directly. But I think, the question of a higher power really deserves kind of a definition if somebody asks that in a way. But it's so hard to define, what somebody means by higher power, because the words come up like a cosmic energy, or a cosmic consciousness. Actually, years ago I read a book called Cosmic Consciousness, and kind of like a collective consciousness in a way, And some other terms that people use are like related to energy, how we have this energy all around us that everybody shares in some way. And usually when people talk about a oneness, like in non-duality teachings and things like that, it often comes up as a type of energy, that people share, or a collective consciousness in some way. And so I think it's interesting to, that we all have our different kind of views about this. And when I was asked that question about an ultimate power, I don't believe in a God like in Christianity. That's just my personal belief. And a person doesn't have to be a meditator, or they can still be a Buddhist or whatever they want to be and believe what they want, in my personal opinion. But I do believe that from the standpoint of the subconscious, and the Buddha didn't talk about the subconscious. Pierre Janet, a French philosopher, psychiatrist, actually was the first one to use the word subconscious. And then Sigmund Freud started using it. Then he abandoned the word subconscious in favor of unconscious. And now today, when people speak of subconscious and unconscious, they say that these are both the same thing. They don't want to try to confuse people, by these terms. But I do believe that the subconscious, we all share. Something that is always there, and it's not like somebody has more of a subconscious than another. It's almost like a type of inner, maybe we could call it an inner power that we can actually tap into in certain ways. And I think that's a big part of meditation, that we understand the subconscious, that we understand that it is really the storehouse for all of our memories and emotions and that type of thing. And so a lot of it has to do with, there's a thought that happens, and then what follows that thought is an emotion. And if we notice that, then we start really grabbing onto something that is substantial, because it is our actual thoughts and our opinions and our beliefs about something that creates these emotions for us. And that's the point where we can actually catch these emotions, or at least we're not trying to bury them or stop them or anything, but to notice them. And so, like when we come into contact with something, with our senses, 5 senses or 6 senses, come into contact, which is eyes, ears, nose, mouth, touch, taste, and then the mind is another sense, according to the Buddha. And when these things come into contact with the outer world, there's that feeling that comes up, that the feeling of whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. In many cases, it's neutral, based on ignorance. And then after that feeling, then there's an emotion can come up based on that. But that's where we can use awareness. And one of my teachers, Matt Flickstein, used to call it a wedge of awareness. And where we can wedge that in between that contact, with the world and our association with it, by awareness alone. And so, matter of fact, you talked about that last night, Chris, about awareness. We had what is called direct pointing here last night, and we were working on all these different things about how we can kind of better ourselves, and it was all based on awareness. Being aware, that these things are possible and that these things could come up for us and all that. But awareness is something that can really be fine-tuned in our meditation practice. To be aware of these things and how we react, to the things in the world. Sounds, like something that somebody says, or a sound that is maybe bothering us when we're meditating or something like that, how we react. Just being aware that that's just simply a sound, or different thoughts that come up, and that's probably the hardest for people in the area of if you know me, I always talk about fear and anger. fear being based on the future, and anger being based on the past, and how these things come up in the mind, and we have this this reaction, this emotion based on that. And these emotions are basically mind states, and they could be in numerous things, a mixture of different things, particularly the hindrances that some of us are familiar with. And so tonight, while we're meditating, I don't want us to get too cognitive, about this, but I'd kind of like to, maybe after a meditation, we'll kind of throw around a few things in regards to, first of all, what we feel about, some kind of a higher power, and how we might identify that, or how we might define it, and it could be, usually the simpler the answer is better, It doesn't have to be a long drawn out thing like I'm talking now, but, just kind of keep that in mind. And some people really, there's no right or wrong. Some people don't believe in like this, kind of collective consciousness, or this power, that everybody can share. And my likening to it is, well, I don't even want to tell you. I'll talk about it later on. And I mentioned the subconscious, but it's more than that for me. And what I think this ultimate, maybe the ultimate emotion, or the ultimate power for us could be. And then we'll just kind of see what comes up in your meditation. Don't be looking for answers or anything like that. Just kind of see what comes up, and we'll kind of briefly discuss it afterwards. And if nothing comes up for you, that's fine too. I'm not going to pick on anybody. And also, I'm asking everybody to kind of look at any kind of emotions that arise in their meditation, because meditation is the training ground for our everyday, typical awareness. When we're out in the world, and we're experiencing the world, and that formal practice of meditation on the cushion is that opportunity for us to see these things arise, to see these things come up, so that we can actually become sensitive to them, and see them and experience them. And sensitive in a good way, right? So, yeah, please make yourself comfortable. Allow the eyes to close. Straightening the back, lifting the chin a little. And bring your attention to the body. Notice how it feels to bring your attention to the body, and how that feeling of presence comes over. And that stillness. And ideally, we could have that presence and that stillness throughout the entire meditation. that is in a perfect meditation, but we don't expect any of that to happen. We want to be very easy on ourselves and know that we focus on the breath or whatever meditation object we're using. Our attention wanders. We notice that. We touch it with our awareness, and then we bring it back to the breath. But everybody in this room is doing the same activity. We're probably all doing it in a slightly different way. If I asked each of us to focus on the breath, all of us would be doing it slightly differently. But at the same time, when we bring people together like this, it seems like we do share some type of energy. Sharing practice of meditation with like-minded people. Most people would agree that it's different than just sitting alone in your room. So it does seem like that we're sharing something, some kind of energy or some kind of power, something that can't be seen, but most likely something that can be felt. Some people might feel it more in the head, or some people might feel it more in the body, particularly in the area of the heart. And I suggest everybody in this room, if you're familiar with metta or loving kindness practice, just thank yourself for being here. Tell yourself this is a wonderful thing that you're doing. Learning more about yourself. And really caring for yourself by meditating this evening with your friends. And then with that genuine appreciation, just try to move that around the room a little bit to everybody else in the room. See how that feels. Just being thankful that everybody has shown up, everybody arrived. We're doing a simple practice that points to our true nature, allows us to be present, find this stillness and this peace of mind, and clarity of mind, allowing insight to rise. Just being aware and like a type of knowing that there's much more than the outer world, the world that comes into contact with the senses, that there's more of a meaningful world within, which is something that we can all share. Maybe not in words, but perhaps in a feeling, nothing that can be seen, but something that can be felt. May each one of us and all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to us, may no difficulties come to us, and may we all meet with spiritual and worldly success. May we have the patience, the courage, and the understanding to meet and overcome any problems or any difficulties that we might face in life. Thank you. Very good. Very quiet evening here at the Meditation Learning Center, I thought. We had a great deal of silence, maybe a little bit more than we normally do, I think. And of course, a little bit of guiding. And then I asked people to kind of, I just suggest that we talk a little bit about oneness or whatever ultimate power, we could call it, whatever we want to, there's so many different ways to look at it. And we're not going to go, around the room and expect everybody to talk. Just, want people to talk freely, because I don't want to, corner anybody, so to speak. But my feeling, like I mentioned, I think the subconscious mind is something that, like when we are born, that it's actually there, like karma, like we that it has come with us from a past life, and that it stays with us when we go on to whatever we're up against, whether we're being reborn or whether maybe we're enlightened to some extent or whatever it might be. And I think it's the subconscious is that same kind of a universal power that we all have. But I also feel that a big part of that one thing that we all share, and that is a part of our living, is love itself. And I think love has a lot to do with, of course, with life, but it has a lot to do with waking up, with enlightenment. I think that's, we don't hear that definition of enlightenment, that it is like a unconditioned love, that enlightened person feels. But I think that's really a big part of it. Not only, we all experience moments where we love somebody. We can easily love our children, our cats, our animals, our partners. Sometimes these things fade, and sometimes they get bigger, and in ups and downs and all this. And I think we all have moments where we have this unconditional love for everyone and everything in the world, and I think it's moments like that where we feel limitless, we feel invincible, we feel just on top of the world, and it's moments like that where we feel like nothing can bring us down. No matter what somebody says or does, it's just one of those things where we feel like connected with everything, and that oneness, really takes hold. And I think that it can be defined as just my feeling, my belief, but I feel it can be defined as, an unconditional love and like a loving kindness. And that's actually what we just got done practicing, Loving Kindness Sutra. And I did a kind of ended, came to that conclusion with another type of metta or loving kindness. Anyway, that's my feeling on this oneness, or this ultimate power, or collective power too, in many ways. And I don't know, was there another question that we were going to look at as far as, we talked a little bit about awareness and how our awareness of emotions, that can be a part of it too, and how this awareness in our meditation practice is kind of fine-tuned, you know. And that is the practice, you know, the formal practice on the cushion is to do that, you know, fine-tune this awareness of these emotions. And I can't remember where it was. Somebody said that in meditation that we're supposed to be hiding from our emotions, and not letting them affect us, and kind of dumping them away, putting them aside. But in reality, no, we're not supposed to be doing that in our meditation practice. We're supposed to, remind ourselves that we're human. We're supposed to experience these emotions, but when we're aware of them, it changes everything. When we feel them creeping up on us or even jumping up on us, we are to really experience these things, but that awareness does change them, very, very quickly. And so when we're aware that we are actually angry, that anger is changes. If we're aware that we're actually fearful and why we're fearful, that changes. And so there's just emotions that we're supposed to experience. It's all part of life. It's all part of living. Yeah, just imagine how life would be if we didn't have, these emotions happening. It would be pretty dry. It would be pretty boring, not to be able to have. So they are important. And so we're kind of talking about two different things. This how we feel. Let me put this out to you. Do you feel that there is like a oneness or some type of energy or a power that we all share, as human beings? I see not a lot of nodding. And some people would call that God, probably, right? Some people might, we can call it a lot of different things. That actually comes up a lot in the 12-step program. What is it, step 11? Can somebody know?
Practice through prayer and meditation to practice these principles in all our affairs. Step 11. Okay.
Step 11 is about
praying only for God's will for us and the power to carry it out.
And God's will, okay. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times people have trouble with that, with that aspect of God, being in there and being in the 12 steps, But then people will define God, differently. And some people define it as nature, which encompasses everything. And it makes it a lot easier. Some people just don't necessarily like that God word, because of their Christian upbringing or something like that. And I think that's that oneness, or that divine power, the divine energy that we're talking about. And a lot of different ways to define it, a lot of different ways to describe it. But I think as if somebody calls themselves a Buddhist, generally they're not saying that there is not a God. They're not saying that that something like a God does not exist. They're really not using that label as such, that they don't pray to God necessarily. Now, most Buddhists I know don't anyway, but they are actually, in many cases, paying attention to that, acknowledging it, that it's there somehow. And doesn't have to have a label, but like I said, I believe anyway that it has a lot to do with this unconditional love that we all experience, something that we all know about. Might not always be there, but we all, we know about it, and also in connection with the subconscious mind, the latent area of the mind that we know very little about, and none of these things can actually be seen. Just like God cannot be seen. We can see the after effects of it, and we can feel it. But I mean by the after effects, we can see seemingly miracles and things like that, that people would say is the will of God, but what is it, So we can see sometimes the results, but, to be able to, we can't see love. We can't see the subconscious, just like we can't see electricity, but we know it's there. We can feel it. We can sure feel electricity, when we run into it in the wrong way, like in a bathtub or something like that. But we know that there's these, I guess you could call it power. There's this energy out there that somehow we're all connected to. That it is, that we feel it's out there, but we don't necessarily. People have different labels for it, and that has actually caused a lot of problems in the world since the beginning of time. Like my power, my energy is the right one, and yours is the wrong one. But we know. I think all of us sitting here know it's the same thing. It's the same. Talking about the same energy, same power, whatever it might be.
Do some Buddhists think of Buddha as a god, or do they think of him as a teacher? Or is there different ones that think of him differently?
Never. A Buddhist would not refer to Buddha as a god. A Buddhist wouldn't. He was a teacher more than anything else. He was a man that walked on the world and just kind of figured things out. He was a meditator. I think it was last week we were talking about that. It's kind of a misconception that Buddha started meditating in his 30s after he left his home. That he was a meditator ever since he was a 10-year-old boy, if not even sooner. And so he was very, very spiritual. And so he was just a man that walked the earth. He became enlightened. We all have he said we all have the opportunity to do.
There's many different Buddhas, so they're almost like reborn,
Yeah, but it's just saying in the same way that we've had many, many lives too. Yeah. The next Buddha is supposed to be Buddha Maitreya, or the Metta Buddha. And interestingly, the last Buddha, this Buddha, predicted that Buddhism would really peak in about 2,500 years. And it would really get strong, and that's where the area that we're in now, because Buddhism is known worldwide now, and it wasn't that long ago, even 50 years, we wouldn't have anything like this here, because, well, we might, but Buddhism just was not that popular. So he predicted that Buddhism would really peak out and really get popular, and then it would die down and almost be in nothing at all in about 500 years after he died. And then he said the Buddha Maitreya, or the Metta Buddha, would appear, and then it would start all over again. So different Buddhas at different periods. We have no idea how many. Well,
127 or something. Isn't it?
I hear depends on the tradition, and
that's what the temple had, those representations. I think it was 127.
all the Buddhas,
So they had
yeah,
them all,
all
lined
the
up. That's
little
what I
white
thought.
Buddhas, yeah.
It almost seems like a godlike kind of thing, Because you know that one's coming.
You know, in the correct me if I'm wrong, but in the Hindu tradition, there's many gods, and
There,
one of them, sometimes they do consider Buddha to be one of the gods.
yeah, it's they're deities. They're not God. God is
Deities.
one, but they're deities that you. I think those were conceived just so that people can relate to something, because let's say you close your eyes and you say Buddha, obviously that this image will come up in your mind.
Mhm.
It's inevitable that every word has an association with an image.
Mhm.
So this was developed, I think, to just focus on an image, and if you want to just have that spiritual
I see.
experience for lay people who are not spiritual, who are living their everyday life. So sit and
That's a very good
And
explanation.
they attribute like different qualities. Like if you want wealth and prosperity, you have this image, and if you want to remove all the obstacles in life, you have this image, and things like that.
Yeah,
So it's generally people. There's a misconception that Hindus have many gods, but it's got like many deities.
more deities. Yeah,
So these were
and
developed, I think, for people, and it also says in the Vedanta that this was developed as like if you were a child, you have a tricycle before he gets on a bicycle. So it's helped to have to develop a spiritual practice before, because it's so abstract. You can't just tell somebody that there is this divine consciousness somewhere and you are that and you connect to that. Like, how do you do that?
right.
So these are like building blocks, but
Yeah.
honestly, most people get stuck at that personal God level.
Yeah,
Asking for stuff and like praying and worshiping.
just like the Christian thing.
Yeah, rituals.
yeah.
You're supposed to go beyond that. That was the whole idea. But
Yeah, and that's very true in the Tibetan tradition too. There's many different Buddhas, medicine Buddha, and red Tara and green Tara, and all these different deities that are the same way,
very
really.
similar.
Yeah. And then there's the primary Buddha Shakyamuni, which is, Buddha was teaching not to do. He said
Yeah.
that will not help you complete what we're trying to do here. And somebody made a statue of him when he was alive, and he saw it, and he made them burn it. It was wooden, and it wasn't plastic. They didn't have plastic then, but he made him burn it, and said, "No, this is not what we're doing here." So if Buddha would walk through that door there, first of all, he would have an insight timer in his hand, but he
Just like
probably,
Shane Wilson.
but he probably wouldn't agree with the statue.
He made you burn it.
Probably, he'd at least put it in the backyard or something.
Probably towards the house.
I don't know. The pictures and the things. I don't know. Maybe someday we'll know. But
What is the
Yeah.
reason like most temples have like a huge Buddha?
tradition,
It's just a tradition.
just tradition. This was a gift that the monks gave me. But I see that we're over a little bit here. I don't want to make people late for their next appointment, whatever that might be. So, thank you. We could talk like this all night. At least I could. I know I could. But thank you, everybody, for coming.